No announcement, no poster, no official confirmation. And yet, a single detail was enough to ignite everything. One line, one moment, one carefully timed signal, and suddenly, the entire fandom was moving in sync. April 2026 kept appearing in conversations that weren't supposed to connect. Familiar locations resurfaced. The silence felt intentional. The timing felt engineered. This isn't hopeful guessing, it's recognition of a pattern. Because when SB19 prepares something major, they don't reveal it outright. They leave markers, and those markers are rarely accidental. Tonight, we're unpacking the detail everyone caught, why it carries weight, and why this could shape up to be the most defining homecoming concert of their career. If you want to follow this before anything becomes official, make sure you're subscribed. What set this off wasn't spectacle or noise. It slipped in quietly, almost understated. That's what stopped fans in their tracks. A single reference, a timing overlap, a detail placed just precisely enough to feel deliberate. Longtime followers recognized it immediately. This wasn't typical speculation or fan overreach. It disrupted the usual pattern. Once fans began lining up dates, past statements, and familiar phrasing, the discussion shifted tone. Screenshots circulated, threads multiplied. Group chats echoed the same question. Why does this fit so perfectly? Because coincidences don't repeat this cleanly. Random hints don't keep pointing to the same window without purpose. And what amplified everything was the absence of response. No clarification, no denial, no playful dismissal, just quiet. And in SB19's history, silence is rarely empty. When rumors miss the mark, they're shut down fast. When they're close, or dead on, they're allowed to linger. That's why this moment matters. Not because anything has been confirmed, but because everything feels aligned. Within hours, feeds were overflowing, not with excitement alone, but with timelines, screenshots, and breakdowns. Fan spaces shifted into research mode. This wasn't hype anymore. It was collective scrutiny, the kind that only happens when something feels plausible. That's when the realization settled in. This actually adds up. For most groups, a theory like this would unravel under doubt, but SB19 has never followed standard playbooks. Their defining moments have rarely been announced first. They've been foreshadowed, carefully, quietly, then allowed to surface through discovery. Look at the past. Major drops, turning point performances, even internal shifts in their trajectory. Fans spotted the signals long before confirmations came. A phrase repeated just enough, a date that aligned too cleanly, a detail left visible but unexplained. Each time, skepticism came first, until it didn't. SB19 knows something many artists overlook. Their fandom isn't just engaged, it's perceptive, analytical, paying attention. Instead of delivering everything outright, they invite fans into the process. That involvement creates ownership, so when confirmation finally arrives, it lands with far more weight. This isn't speculation built on hope. There are real instances where fans mapped timelines with near-accurate precision, not by chance, but because SB19's hints follow structure. Their signals aren't random, they're intentional. That's why this moment feels different. It aligns with their history. It follows their cadence. Silence first, observation next, confirmation last. SB19 doesn't broadcast their plans. They leave traces for those who know how to read them. And when patterns repeat, coincidence stops being a defense.
A homecoming isn't about returning to where you were. It's about returning as someone changed. For SB19, that distinction matters. This isn't a group that was handed momentum. They built it, stage by stage, from rooms where recognition was uncertain to global platforms where their presence now carries authority. A true homecoming doesn't happen just because fans want one. It happens when there's something meaningful to bring back. SB19 has that now. International tours, global listeners, industry respect. Coming home at this point isn't nostalgia. It's acknowledgement, a full-circle moment that says, this is where it began and this is what it grew into. That's why the timing feels charged. Earlier, it would have felt rushed. Now, it feels right. Longtime supporters get to witness the arc completed in real time. Newer fans gain context, not just of the music, but of the journey behind it. Legacy isn't built through trends. It's forged in moments like this. Homecomings don't just mark success, they lock it into memory. They turn performances into milestones and achievements into story. And that's why this possibility matters. For SB19, this wouldn't register as just another date on a tour calendar. It would function as a reflection, one moment holding the weight of everything they've built. That's why the idea carries so much emotional gravity. At a glance, an April 2026 timeline might look like hesitation. In reality, it reads as control. Large-scale tours aren't driven by adrenaline alone. They depend on recovery cycles, logistical alignment, and global planning. SB19 has spent years moving between regions, adjusting to different audiences, time zones, and expectations. A homecoming at this level demands more than enthusiasm. It demands readiness. April sits in a rare strategic window. It avoids the chaos of year-end scheduling, steers clear of festival congestion, and allows space after demanding international runs. That breathing room enables sharper creative focus and prevents the moment from being swallowed by industry noise. When the objective is impact, not just turnout, timing becomes everything. There's also internal alignment at play. Release cycles, career landmarks, milestones fans may not fully see yet. Significant moments rarely exist in isolation. They're built to connect. April allows for deliberate build-up, narrative cohesion, and sustained attention instead of rushed excitement. Moving too fast would weaken the statement. A premature homecoming feels reactive. A well-timed one feels destined. Waiting isn't uncertainty, it's assurance. It signals that SB19 isn't chasing moments as they appear, they're designing them. When the focus finally returns home, they want it sharp, centered, and impossible to overlook. That isn't delay, it's command. And if this truly is a homecoming, the venue itself becomes part of the message. This isn't a moment meant for a standard space. SB19 has moved beyond rooms chosen for convenience. The scale of their journey now demands a setting that matches it. Venue choice communicates belief. Selecting a massive location isn't about spectacle, it's about confidence. Confidence that the audience will come. Confidence that the moment deserves to be witnessed in full, not confined to those closest to the stage. A homecoming like this isn't meant to feel limited, it's meant to feel shared. That's why capacity speculation matters. A large-scale venue points towards something historic, not just ticket sales, but thresholds being crossed, numbers that reset expectations, evidence that homegrown acts can command enormous crowds without compromise. And that kind of statement doesn't happen by accident.
There's an important distinction here. Filling seats is impressive. Shifting history is something else entirely. Sellouts happen every season. Records, however, redefine what's possible. If SB19 chooses scale, they aren't simply staging a show, they're making a statement. They're placing this moment in the realm of national significance, not limiting it to a fan-only celebration. This isn't about ambition for attention's sake, it's about recognizing when a moment has grown too large to be contained. For fans, a homecoming is joy. For SB19, it's a reckoning. Returning home after global recognition carries a weight no international stage can replicate. This is where the journey began, where early uncertainty lived, where belief had to exist before proof. That brings a different kind of pressure. Not the pressure to impress, but the pressure to remain authentic. Success reshapes perception. A homecoming tests whether an artist can stand in the same place they started without shrinking themselves or performing a version others expect. This wouldn't be about relevance. That conversation is settled. It would be about respect for the path taken, the sacrifices made, the seasons when visibility felt distant, and the supporters who stayed before momentum arrived. Emotion hits differently at home.
Nothing is symbolic here. Every lyric carries memory. Every silence has context. Every cheer comes from people who know the history, not just the hits. That's what could make this their most powerful performance, not because it's louder or larger, but because it's closer. A moment where ambition and gratitude occupy the same stage. And a homecoming of this magnitude wouldn't stop at the venue walls. It would send shockwaves through the industry. When a globally established act returns home at full scale, it signals something bigger than success. It signals permanence. It tells decision-makers that P-pop isn't a regional curiosity, but a global presence grounded in its own culture. Industries respond to evidence, not optimism. A large-scale homecoming with international attention reframes what Filipino artists can command domestically. Coverage wouldn't just highlight the concert, it would spotlight the implication. Global success doesn't require leaving home behind. International observers would be watching closely, fans abroad, media outlets, industry figures. Moments like this become reference points, examples of how worldwide reach can reinforce national identity rather than replace it. SB19 stands at the center of that shift. Their trajectory proves that strong roots don't cap ambition, they anchor it. This wouldn't just be a return, it would be a model. And that's why this feels larger than one group. It hints at a turning point where P-pop stops being described as up-and-coming and starts being recognized as established, self-assured, and powerful enough to come home without losing its global voice. In a culture obsessed with constant updates, SB19's quiet stands out, and that's by design. When used deliberately, silence becomes strategy. It slows the cycle, concentrates attention, and transfers power from the announcement itself to the anticipation surrounding it. Speaking too soon would dilute the impact. Excitement has an expiration date, and early confirmation shortens it. By holding back, SB19 lets curiosity deepen instead of flare out. Fans aren't just reacting, they're committing time, thought, and emotion. That kind of momentum can't be manufactured. This restraint also prevents burnout. Oversaturation weakens interest. Absence sharpens it. Each week without clarity raises the stakes rather than draining patience because the signals feel purposeful, not neglected. There's psychology behind this. Anticipation creates stronger emotional bonds than instant reward. When fans feel they've pieced the story together themselves, the eventual reveal feels earned, personal. SB19 understands that rhythm. They don't rush moments, they develop them. So when confirmation finally comes, it won't feel like breaking news, it will feel like alignment. That's why the quiet isn't emptiness, it's authority.
If this signal holds, and past behavior suggests it might, the next phase won't arrive all at once. It will surface through structure. SB19 rarely moves straight from silence to announcement. There's always an in-between layer, and knowing how to read it keeps fans ahead. First comes scheduling logic, gaps that suddenly align, commitments ending without replacement. These aren't rumors, they're foundations shifting. Then comes language. When wording turns forward-facing but remains intentionally vague, it's often calculated. Ambiguity for SB19 is a tool, not an oversight. Next, subtle movement behind the scenes. Partners, venues, and internal teams begin aligning quietly. Echoes appear, enough to notice, never enough to confirm. That's the difference between real signals and false alarms. False ones are loud, emotional, and rushed. They burn bright and vanish. Patience matters because SB19 doesn't deliver announcements, they unfold narratives. Each step sets the stage for the next. Fans who stay observant don't just hear the news, they recognize when it becomes inevitable. That's the experience being built here.
not waiting in frustration, but watching a story take shape. So when confirmation finally arrives, it won't feel abrupt, it will feel earned. If this homecoming becomes real, its value won't be measured by ticket numbers alone. It will be measured by symbolism, a full-circle moment where the journey stops being something you explain and becomes something you witness. SB19 started as long shots in an industry that offered no guarantees. Every step forward was fought for. A homecoming at this scale would mark the transition from survival to authorship, from participating in the industry to actively shaping it. On that stage, history and present would exist side by side, early struggle in the same place where global success is now acknowledged, longtime believers standing next to new fans who arrived after the headlines, one space holding every chapter at once. That's why moments like this last, not because of size, but because of meaning. Some concerts are unforgettable nights, others become reference points. If this happens, it won't just close a chapter, it will open a new era, one defined not by ambition, but by legacy. Because some concerts entertain, others rewrite the timeline. If you don't want to miss the moment speculation turns into confirmation, make sure you're subscribed, because when SB19 finally speaks, everything changes at once.